Greetings, and yet another follow-up video looking at local history and the discrepancies with it. So I thought I'd start with just another look at the old Pars Bank building, or so we're told about it. And I just want something I forgot to mention in the last video. These plaques above and below the windows on this, even at this where it is so high up, it's got these floral patterns and things, which and again at the top here you have this like a cross within this circle. There's all these little details so high up that you cannot really appreciate them from street level. Anyway, to today's topic, I wanted to feature on a building, very old building, which is just roughly about where it's got this blue circle here. It's a total contrast to this, and in some ways it's more the sort of thing you would expect to see from the past. We're talking about this old timber framed building which was open. I remember it in use as a bookshop. Totally the opposite of everything in these Greco-Roman styles. You can see the way the timber has bowed over the years, and it is hardly sort of accurate or symmetrical, and yet it still stands. So we'll just have a look inside, and you're greeted as soon as you go in with this fireplace, and you've got this antiquitech here, which I'm sure is something to do with the energy transfer. We'll move on, and from the other side of the so-called fireplace, and there's also a cellar. A view of it, you can see then you can actually, there's another part you can actually go down and actually have a look. And there is even a well, which goes down quite a way to what is now dry earth. Now, referring back to this map, what I said yesterday, there's your natural spring, and then you've got Upper and Lower Brook Street. Now we're here, and I've suggested that this would have been the other bank of the water inlet at one time, which would have joined on what is now the locked gated wet dock, as opposed to the tidal River Gipping here. But obviously that didn't go to the top of the water. The water would have been higher than that, so maybe over successive time that the water level dropped, and that's why it's now dry. And yet another fireplace there. This is upstairs in that building. Also uncovered, similar to what would be on those carvings on the Pars Bank, is this floral, I would say Phoenician design, very old by the looks of it. And another view, you can see where you can go down to the cellar, and also the well, which is even lower than that. I would say a good, probably about 12 foot easily down to the lower surface, and I would suggest it is getting fairly close to the true ground level at that height. Also they found this residence sort of nearby, about, I think dates from the 1600s, but obviously that's just all speculation. This piece of wood as well, not from that building, but was on display there and is said to have been found nearby. So I thought I'd just include that, just purely out of interest. Now this is the dock area, as depicted, quite a wide expanse of river. These are paintings in the customs house. Something very interesting about that as well. Now you'll notice just below that painting you have the arch of a door frame. We'll come back to that one in a moment. And another view, I mean, showing a very different dock area, with almost like a beach area here. Well, it's still tidal today, this river. Now this is just an office door or a fire door. What a lot of expense to go to. This is clearly much newer. which again I will show in another photograph. But now this is the inside of that archway which I showed yesterday of the customs house. There was the painting I showed. There's the brick archway. This has been added in and made lower for some reason. Now you can also tell when you look at this brickwork around here, the neat mortar, but when it comes to this beam, it is not of the same quality at all. It's quite shoddy in comparison. It doesn't have the neatness of the mortar between the brick. So it does beg the question, why did they lower that down like that? For what is the purpose? What are they not telling us about all of this? And again, another archway, and if you look very carefully, you can see the brick lintel under there. This is all fairly recent looking, all this. But why would you bother going to all that expense on an internal doorway for something that isn't actually open to the public most of the time anyway? Now, this is another interesting picture. I showed this yesterday. These are the ruins, or the Victorian mock-up of this friary. Now I'm just going to read the tiny little extract that it said about this again. It says, walk in the footsteps of the Dominican friars between their remaining low walls of separate stone. Now what is very interesting about this, I'm just going to find a photograph now to show you, because this was not mentioned by the geologist in the talk, saying about how this stone was taken, what they call Harwich stone, was taken from the riverbed of the Devon. So it had already been underwater. They built this huge structure that he said was bigger than St Mary le Tower, which is the nearest we've got to a cathedral in this town. And then you've got these foundation stones. But what he failed to mention, and this is a book of my mother's written in 1958, entitled Ipswich Through the Ages. Now the caption for this is West View of Christ Hospital, site of Blackfriars Priory. And now this is supposed to be 1748. And that would have been over those foundation stones. Now it was funny that none of this was mentioned either. I mean, that is not an insignificant building or an insignificant piece of history to accidentally forget to not include in the commentary. So clearly those foundation stones are not as bad as they say they are. So again, it's like, well, if you're going to tell a narrative, at least tell us an honest one, because this is so easy to pull apart. And again, from that same book, this is the town centre. This is dated 1852. Now I've took a close-up of this. Now this is 1852. There is the town hall. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. There, now it doesn't show very clearly, but I've zoomed in on the phone. It does say Ipswich Golden Lion Hotel. And you'll notice you've got the doorway and a ground floor and first floor. Now if we compare, if I pull up the right, I'll pull up the right picture. Now here is the town hall today. So there has either been another story added or it's a different building. But here is the town hall, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Now you've got all these steps and these lower windows. So we'll just go back to this other picture again, just to compare. So why would you need to pull basically a very similar structure down to replace it by another one? Now again, the narrative for this, in this booklet, I shall just read this. It says, Town Hall and Corn Exchange. The present town hall was built in 1868. The foundation stone was laid by Mayor Ebenezer Goddard on the 18th of April 1866 and was opened by Mayor John Patterson Cobbold on the 28th of January 1868. So they've pulled this down in that was standing there in 1852. Presumably that is the same Golden Lion, and they've added another floor on top of this. The rest of it does seem to match that other picture. I will just go back again just to compare. So there's the Golden Lion, and there's the Golden Lion. It is similar, and you can see a band, and it is quite possible that they have added another floor. So I'll take it from that we are in the same location. So here is the town hall that stands there today, with the 1, 2, 3, 4 pillars, 3 windows either side. Now we'll go back to this one again. Unfortunately, you cannot see now. Doesn't seem to have 3 windows either side. So did they demolish that building completely, or have they modified it? Something certainly doesn't add up with any of this. And again, why is there no mention about this Christ Hospital built on the site of the Blackfriars Priory? Now that's that was a lithograph from 1748, and yet the geologist didn't mention it, and it's not mentioned in the booklet for this open day weekend. It's all very odd. Another very interesting feature as well. I'll go back to the slightly wider view rather than the close-up of the town hall. And the artist's illustration doesn't look to be imagination. It looks to be he is depicting what he actually saw. Now, it's not that clear to see. Is that... It doesn't seem to have the slope that is there today. It's quite a gradient compared to that photo. That looks fairly flat there. And there's sort of people in the attire that you would expect to see about 1858. 1852. I would have thought. I did notice as well this end building, the Antiquitech, still seems to be the same. It still seems to be roughly the same shape as well. So there's a few more bits and pieces, but certainly we now have an image